FBI's head, Christopher Wray, he had a very interesting exchange with Senator Kennedy earlier this month before the raid.
And it is trouble. And it is totally...
And it's not about their political beliefs.
Right.
It's not about their political beliefs. It's about that this is a senior employee at the FBI with years of experience going on social media and tweeting this kind of stuff.
So I have, since I started in...
Which gives the people the impression that there is bias, whether there is or there isn't.
I feel very strongly, and I have communicated consistently since I started as director, that our folks need to make sure that they're not just doing the right thing, that they're doing it in the right way, and that they avoid even the appearance of bias or lack of objectivity.
Now, that exchange had to do with the FBI agent who's in charge of the office that's conducting the investigation on January 6th, who tweeted all sorts of negative stuff about Donald Trump. And you heard what Kennedy said. You should be avoiding the appearance of bias. Whether there's bias or not, you should be avoiding the appearance. And you heard what Wray said, well, I've always tried to make sure, Now, the press secretary, KGJP, was asked whether anybody at the White House was given a heads up about this FBI raid.
On a different topic, the FBI is serving a search warrant on the former president's residence in Florida. Was the president or anyone at the White House aware of that search warrant, or has anyone at the White House or the president been briefed in the aftermath of that search warrant being executed?
No. The president was not briefed, was not aware of it. No one at the White House was given a heads up. No, that did not happen.
You want us to believe something that's never happened before, where because of an alleged violation of the presidential records, FBI executes a search warrant and searches that president's residence. Nothing like that has ever happened. Even the LA Times said it was a very serious, big deal. You're telling me nobody mentioned it to Joe Biden? Maybe somebody mentioned it, he forgot. She was asked, the press secretary, whether or not this was not weaponizing the FBI.
Throughout his time in office...
I heard the quote. We will be playing the quote tonight at 6 o'clock. Is this administration weaponizing the Justice Department and the FBI against political opponents?
Peter, the president believes in the rule of law. The president believes in the independence of the Department of Justice.
That's a yes or no?
No, that is... No, it's a yes or a no for you. I'm answering the question. You may not like it, but I'm answering the question, and I'm answering the question, and I'm telling you that we are not going to comment on a criminal investigation. The president has been very clear. I laid out what his thoughts were back on January 7th in 2021 about how he saw the Department of Justice. And I'm just going to leave it there. We're not going to comment from here, from this White House, on a criminal investigation that is currently happening.
A large number of people now believe there's a two-tiered system of justice. Two-tiered system of justice. And how can you not? The other day we talked about Hillary violating the Espionage Act. I told you about the gentleman I ran into at the airport who worked in documents in government. And he didn't think that was a big deal because he said Hillary lacked the intent. I said, read the statute. The statute does not require intent. And she sent and received classified information. And the head of the FBI at the time, James Comey, does this big presentation. At the last minute, said, what? She did this, she did this, she did this. She sent and received classified information. And we don't know whether or not that information had been hacked, but certainly the people to whom she sent stuff very likely had things hacked. So it was a big, big deal. And then at the last minute, he said, but she lacked the intent to violate the statute. And then you've got Eric Holder. Eric Holder was subpoenaed by Congress to turn over records pertaining to Fast and Furious. He didn't do it. And he was found in criminal contempt of Congress, the first and only sitting AG to be so found. He was taken to court by the Republicans, and the judge negotiated a deal under which those documents were turned over. Nobody raided his place. Lois Lerner, Lois Lerner was the head of the tax-exempt status section of the IRS, and she was denying the applications or holding up the applications of these conservative charities for a tax-exempt status so their donors could donate money and get a tax write-off. And nothing happened to her. So you've got Hunter Biden. The laptop story was dismissed by the media. And on the laptop, he refers to his father, the big guy, as getting 10%. So if Hunter is getting illegal funds, we don't know that yet, and part of those illegal funds end up in the wallet of his dad, that means his dad illegally obtained money. As far as I know, there's no criminal investigation against Joe Biden. So this is the kind of nonsense that's causing so many people to believe there are two tiers of justice, one for people that the FBI likes, another for people the FBI does not like. Andy McCarthy is a former U.S. attorney. Here's what he said.
I think the Justice Department is under a lot of pressure, political pressure from the Democratic base to bring charges against Trump and the people who were working with Trump in connection with the events that led up to the Capitol riot.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that political pressure plays a role in whether or not the FBI executes a search? He just now said that. Former AG Whitaker, listen to this.
One of the things that is a question is why send 30 FBI agents to carry out 30 boxes, and how extensive did they actually search for the information they wanted, or did they just go grab anything that wasn't attached to the walls? And that's, you know, in this case, obviously, if they had particular things they were looking for, a subpoena could have easily accomplished the exact same, you know, retention and grabbing of the documents that a search warrant could. So this is like you said, unprecedented and really shocking.
Again, the LA Times said much the same thing. We talked earlier about Trump's lawyer. She was there.
When I arrived and kind of announced myself as the legal representation for President Trump. I asked to see a copy of the warrant. Initially, they refused and said, you know, we don't have to show it to you. And there was a little bit of an exchange about whether it was appropriate to withhold the warrant when you're searching the residence of the former president, who's likely to be the Republican nominee in the next election. So they conceded and let me see it. They did not give me a copy of it right away, but they did let me see it. It was very, I would say, thin. And as you can tell from public records, the affidavit, the supporting documentation of what the probable cause was to obtain the warrant has been sealed, so we're not allowed to see that. We have to go to court to request the judge to release that, which, you know, may or may not happen. So we don't know what the probable cause is, why they were allowed to search, but they did.
But what were they looking for? Did that give you any indication? Were they looking for documents like we've been led to believe for the Presidential Records Act? Is that really the foundational ask on the warrant was for the Presidential Records Act, which has never been aggressively pursued or prosecuted in this country, not once since 1978 when it was put in place? Is that what they told you?
Yes, and yeah, that actually is. They also said that they were looking for classified documents, evidence of a crime as far as classified documents go. So they were looking for both classified information that they think should not have been removed from the White House, as well as presidential records. The irony of both, if you want to call it that, is that it is the president himself who gets to decide what is a presidential record. So why they get to redefine that is unclear, and why they get to search, why that's even in a warrant, it doesn't really make any sense. And the same thing with any potential classified information, which I don't believe there was any down there. We had done a search of it before and didn't find anything noteworthy. Yet I'm sure that they're claiming that there was something, you know, terribly egregious, that's a grave matter of national security. But we'll find out.
I find that hard to believe.
I find it hard to believe, too. This could have been accomplished with a simple subpoena. You did not have to send a bunch of FBI agents. Jonathan Turley feels much the same way. He is a Fox News analyst. He's also a liberal professor who voted twice for Obama.
This was a finite amount of material. It was located in the residence. The subject was not even in the residence. Why did you require this battalion of FBI agents to descend upon the former president's home? So those are types of questions that will be raised. Now, this doesn't mean that there was not a basis for the application for the raid. There is authority here, obviously.
On the other hand, you can't work this out. Again, never happened before. Normally, when presidents take things that the National Archives say they shouldn't have taken them, you sit down, you work it out. And they were discussing. President Trump, as I mentioned, turned over, I think, 12 to 15 boxes of materials already. Clearly, there was some more that the National Archives felt that he needed to turn over. But you have to do this in order to get them? Now, the idea, again, is that behind the January 6th committee is that it's going to hurt Donald Trump's chances of running for re-election. And as we've mentioned, the polls show now that a fewer number of people now believe that Trump was responsible, and a greater number now believe that Trump had nothing whatever to do with what happened on January 6th. And Senator Graham believes that this raid is really going to help Donald Trump's popularity within the base.
Again, here we go again. I lived through Crossfire Hurricane. I lived through the Mueller investigation. The FISA court rebuked the Department of Justice for providing false information to the court to obtain a warrant against Carter Page. Is it plausible the same people would be going after Trump again 90 days before the midterms? So the pathway for President Trump to become the nominee is much wider now than it was yesterday. The likelihood of him being reelected is greater than it was yesterday, because if you got something that is really so compelling, you had to go into the man's home with guns drawn to get the information. Tell the American people, to every Republican listening to me, we should be clamoring and demanding answers to the questions of why they had to raid President Trump's home 90 days before an election.
To give you an idea of how enraged Republicans are, I give you the case of Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh is a former congressman from Illinois. And at one time, he supported Trump. But after Trump got elected, and all this evidence came out about Russian interference, and Trump refused to acknowledge that the interference altered the outcome of the election, he never denied the Russians interfered. But as far as Joe Walsh was concerned, the fact that Donald Trump did not acknowledge, in his view, that the Russians interfered to elect Trump made him turn against Trump. Here's what Joe Walsh said in 2016, in December.
So I spent a bit of time reading your tweets. You, sir, are angry. Tell me why.
I went on my tweet storm this weekend, Brooke, because I'm outraged at the lack of outrage, especially on my side, the Republican side. I get that the country's divided, but my God, a foreign government interfered with our election. That should piss everybody off. That should especially anger my side. And it's like, Brooke, because our guy won. Trump won. We're going to keep our mouths shut. I mean, that's just so wrong. The tepid response from Republicans.
So you, just so I'm clear, you believe the CIA assessment that yes, indeed, Russia's intent was to meddle to get Trump to win?
Oh my gosh, Brooke, there's no debate. It happened. I mean, again, not to parrot Hillary, 17 agencies said they interfered. This Washington Post report this weekend made clear it's a fact. And then for Donald Trump, I mean, everybody, look, all Republicans and Democrats in D.C. know that they interfered with this election. For Donald Trump to call it ridiculous and not believe it, he ought to be ashamed of himself.
Now, again, Donald Trump said what was ridiculous is the idea that the Russian interference put him there. He did not deny there was Russian interference. Anyway, that was Joe Walsh in 2016. Here's Joe Walsh yesterday.
The vast majority of Republicans are reflecting what I'm hearing every day, the last day or two, from Republican voters. I have never heard Republican voters this angry and fired up, and I'm behind Donald Trump now all the way. I haven't heard this in a long time, and you can bet those Republican office holders are hearing.
And you're hearing from.
Bit of a 180 now. Now, the judge who approved the search has donated in the past money to Barack Obama. donated it to his 2008 campaign for president, and also $2,000 to his Obama Victory Fund. He also donated $500 to Jeb Bush's 2016 presidential campaign. Does not appear to be very fond of Donald Trump, the judge. He also was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida from 1996 to 2008 before leaving his position to become a trial lawyer. Now, there's a law that says you cannot use information that you obtained in your job as U.S. attorney when you have your own private practice, and allegedly he did that. He was accused of violating the DOJ's policies regarding switching sides. In implication, he used the information to win favor with his clients who were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. He claims he never represented Epstein, just his pilots, his scheduler, described by some victims as Epstein's sex slave. Anyway, Reinhardt, the judge, was accused of using information that he obtained when he was a U.S. attorney to benefit his law practice. He denied it. As far as I know, he was never prosecuted. Now, I mentioned earlier that voters are increasingly believing that there are two tiers of justice. Nearly 80%, according to a recent poll of American voters, believe just that there are two sets of laws, one for everyday Americans and one for Washington, D.C. insiders. And 58.5% of voters now believe the federal bureaucracies in D.C., like the EPA, like the CDC, like the IRS, have grown too large and have become corrupt. Tulsi Gabbard is a Democrat who ran for president. And she said that this raid, as Donald Trump describes it, ought to be not just of concern to Trump, not just of concern to Republicans, but of concern to us all.
I think we're seeing some of the outrage coming from people across the country, regardless of their political persuasion. And I hope that those who aren't paying attention do take notice, because if you think this is just about Trump, you're wrong. This is about every single one of us as Americans, and this precedent that's being set of an abuse of power that's not even being hidden anymore. I think it maybe was happening behind the curtains, or maybe they were denying was happening. It is out in the open, in broad daylight, blatant abuse of power, targeting political opponents, targeting those who dare to dissent, and attacking our most fundamental constitutional rights and freedoms. So don't think this is about somebody else. Don't think this is about just people of one, political persuasion. This is about every one of us as Americans and protecting our rights and freedoms.
I keep waiting for Tulsi Gabbard to switch sides and become a Republican. But like Joe Manchin, there are a few kinds of things she says right, but she still is a tax spend, regulate Democrat who wants to expand government, wants a national health care system for everybody, single payer. So she's still a Democrat. But every now and then she says things that are very, very sensible. I mentioned earlier this law, 18 U.S.C. Section 2027. And some people are suggesting that if Donald Trump violated this about the presidential records, that he cannot run for office. And it says in here, a person who violated this is now, quote, disqualified from holding any office under the United States, end of quote. Again, I'm quite certain that this is clearly a violation of the Constitution. Why? The Constitution sets forth the criteria for running for president. You have to be a naturalized citizen, over 35. Some state can't pass some sort of law saying you have to do this, that, and the other in order for you to qualify. I ran into that when I ran for governor of California. A law was passed by the legislature out here that the outgoing governor, Jerry Brown, refused to sign because he felt it was against the Constitution. Incoming governor, Gavin Newsom, signed it. It required anybody who's running for president to, in order to be eligible to run for president and to get votes in California, you had to turn over 5 years of income tax returns. Now, this is before somebody stole Trump's income tax returns and made them public illegally. Trump, as you know, for years was refusing to turn over his tax returns. So California decided to punish Trump by making him turn over his tax returns if you want to qualify to run for office in California. So I announced my candidacy, and the law was written so broadly that in order to err on the side of caution, I also turned over 5 years of taxes. You have to turn over two sets. One set of about 700 pages, another set of about 700 pages. We turned it over for reasons that I still cannot quite understand. One set had 7 pages missing. Now, the first set had the pages. The second set did not have the pages. All the Secretary of State had to do is look at the first set and find the missing pages. There were the last 7 pages missing, by the way. So you didn't have to look that hard to find them. But she then tried to disqualify me from running. So we sued. We made 2 arguments. First argument is that the statute did not apply to a recall. The second argument was that we fundamentally complied because all the Secretary of State had to do, as I said, is to look at the first set, find the 7 pages missing, and then pair them up with the second set. So we had a court hearing. It was on YouTube. You can watch it yourself. And the judge was a Democrat who'd gone to UC Berkeley, who was up for a judgeship by Gavin Newsom. Not real promising. And she ruled 2 things. She ruled that the statute did not even apply to Mr. Elder, to a recall, and if it did, he substantially complied, and the Secretary of State could easily have corrected the 7 pages. And it was dismissed, and the rest, as you know, is history. Alan Dershowitz is also a left-wing professor, and he too voted for Obama twice. He too says that the raid was improper.
Going to go now to Alan Dershowitz, our resident attorney and expert. We've got this raid. Sir, it's good to have you on at Mar-a-Lago, the FBI at Mar-a-Lago. Your top-line thoughts. We're trying to still piece together what this is exactly about.
Anybody, unless they can't get the information through subpoenas and other lawful methods. A raid is supposed to be a last resort. But this administration has used the weaponization of the justice system against its political enemies. It's arrested people, denied them bail, put them in handcuffs, used all kinds of techniques that are not usually applied to American citizens. And
this is a bold charge he's making, that the FBI has essentially been weaponized to go after people they don't like, namely Republicans, namely people in Trump's orbit.
I just hope this raid has a justification. If it doesn't have a justification, the material seized in it will be suppressed.
Any indications on your end what this is about, or are you just as blindsided as everybody else? We didn't see this one.
Well, I suspect it has to do with some investigations leading toward Donald Trump and some of his associates. But again, the law is clear. You don't engage in a raid unless you've exhausted all the other remedies, unless you believe that the person raided will destroy the evidence. Raids are not a first recourse in America. They're a last recourse. And so the government will have to show a court eventually that they exhausted all other possibilities, or they had a reasonable basis for believing that the evidence would be destroyed if it was sought in the normal legal course of events through subpoena. Raids are a last resort, but today, in many instances, it's being used as a first resort. The same thing is true with they're supposed to be last resorts. You write a letter to the lawyer saying, please show up in front of a judge, and that's the way it usually works. But in order to get on television, they have a lot of these raids where people are arrested, put in handcuffs, sometimes put in leg shackles, bail denied. Presumption still applies, but it's applied only in theory, but not in practice.
Again, Alan Dershowitz is a left-wing professor emeritus at Harvard, voted twice for Barack Obama, and he's saying this is absolutely outrageous, as did Jonathan Turley earlier.
Understood. Yeah, President Trump releasing quite a lengthy statement on Truth Social. Here's part of it. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It is prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024. Just wrapping it up, he basically says what you were indicating there, that this is, this is something that was not necessary, that he was cooperating. You said this should be a last resort. Maybe it wasn't, according to the president.
Yes, there's evidence that we're not. This is improper and it is misconduct, and we have to find out what the facts are. But we have to make sure that the shoe fits on the other foot, that we want to make sure that what's being done here is something that Democrats would not oppose if it were being done to Democratic operatives as well. I don't think it passes.
Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about Joe Biden's tax and spending bill and the fact that it authorizes 87,000 new IRS agents. Now, I want you to hit that like button, smash that subscriber button, and make sure you watch the show whenever you can, because we post excerpts every single day. Also, you can call the show, 888-971-7243, 888-971-SAGE. I'll be right back. Hope you enjoyed that video. The full show is available to watch right now on Epoch TV. Just click the link in the description below to learn more, because we've got a country to save.